There are only two things I'm elitely good at: teaching guitar lessons and somehow getting gasoline out my hands every time I fill up my gas tank. Can't fix it, guys. Been doing it for a while. Still can't get a clean pump. Working on it. But the guitar lesson part actually has a lot of merit. So today we're talking about this kind of thing that I just semi-recently discovered that I feel like I need, but I want to share with you because this is going to be a trick that you're never going to forget. It's in the People's Key, the key of G. This video is sponsored by Elixir Strings, the finest strings, the strings of the people. I will be talking more about these strings later in the lesson, which, spoiler alert, I don't want to tell you which ones I use. You're going to have to get to later in the lesson to find out. But the People's Key, key of G major, all right? So what does that even mean? What are we doing in a key? Well, anytime you're in a key, that means 7 notes sound good together and 5 notes don't sound good. This is going to be a great way to find the 7 notes that sound good all over the fretboard in the most famous popular key in music, okay? So before we get into it, we should know the notes in the key of G, all right? They're basically all the natural notes. There's only one sharp. F has an F sharp, so no first fret on the low E string, F sharp. Right? So we could play the major scale like this: G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. If I go by the frets, it would be 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 2, 4, 5. But I think the main thing here is talking about intervals in the space between notes, because then we can move all this stuff around and it's going to be really easy. So real quick, listen how this sounds as single notes, and then how it sounds as 2 notes at a time. Now, doing it on just the D and G strings is going to have a lot of utility and merit, which we're going to unveil as this lesson goes on, all right? So what I mean by that, what I mean by an interval, is basically an interval is just space between 2 notes, right? So like the open G string would be the first note in the G major scale. The second note would be the second fret on the G string. This is an A note. From G, we skip the G sharp and go right to A. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Now you're like, all right, I didn't even know how to do that. The way to do that is you apply a formula that makes it really easy. Now on a guitar, or really anywhere on music, if you go 2 notes higher, 2 frets higher, that's a whole step. 1 fret higher or 1 note higher would be a half step, right? So we have a note, a whole step and a half step, a whole step, a whole step, a whole step, and a half step. Okay? So the intervallic formula, as it would be a note, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. And as long as you can know how to do that intervallic formula between any 2 notes in any key, that's all you need to learn music. Sounds simple, right? Well, actually, it is a little bit easier than it seems, right? So first of all, let's talk about how we can maybe find all those same notes on a different string, okay? Again, I get the temptation to think of frets as doing it, like, oh, G major scale, G string, open, 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 11, 12. That might be easy in like a mind tab format, but it's probably not the best way to do it. Just like me putting the gas cap back on my tank, there's probably a way that I'm at fault, but I'm not ready to look into that. Still have that sweet gasoline smell in my hands every time I go fill my car up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about G's relation to D, okay? So G, A, B, C, D. It's the 5th of G. 5 notes away, and the major scale is a 5th. You already know this whether you know it or not. Like if you play a power chord, like the 3rd fret on the E string, the 5th fret on the A string, that's a G and a D, right? So we can play through the whole major scale just with power chords. Just like that, moving up and down. But the relationship between a root note and its 5th actually runs a little bit deeper than just being a way to play them together at the same time. In fact, if we play all the notes in the G major scale starting on its 5th, it looks like this. The really cool thing about this is the open D string is just right below the open G string, right? So real quick, I'm just gonna do the whole half thing to play the notes in the G major scale. Watch this. Whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. I'm gonna play the same notes, but starting on D. Now, that seemed pretty similar, right? In fact, there's only one thing that was different. It was the distance between the 6th and 7th notes, okay? If this is confusing at all, stick with it because this will make sense eventually. I promise you this will make sense eventually, right? So again, I'm just going to call the names of the notes out as I do this on the G string, then the D string, then I'm going to play them together, which I think is a really important, crucial part of this lesson. G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. So the difference is here. Okay? G has what's called a major 7. The 7th note and the 8th note are separated by a half step, 11 to 12 on the G string, F sharp to G. The only difference from an intervallic standpoint between the 5th of a key's note, D's kind of spot here, is the distance between the 7th and the 8th note is a whole step. C to D, F sharp to G, C to D. Other than that, everything else is the same. So you can play them together, right? All right. Now, what's cool about this, and let's just kind of do this together, right? I'm just kind of picking the D and G strings. Open 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, 10, 11. That's where I'm going to split off. I'm going to diverge here. And then 12 and 12, okay? Now again, I said I wasn't going to use fret names, but I think it is kind of helpful to just kind of see it, right? So whole, whole, half, whole, 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 because I'm still kind of giving G the benefit of the doubt, half. Now, how is this helpful to your playing? Like, cool trick, Sean, that's great. How can I use it to help my playing out? Well, no matter where you are, you can always be like, all right, well, maybe this is something that I can go to. Think of open 2, 4, 5 as just being the exact same kind of shape on the D and the G strings. You can maybe make a little scale out of it. Play them together as double stops. You can maybe play them in between chords. Like, let's say I want to kind of jam on a G major chord. I can kind of go farther past the 5th fret. So right off the bat, that's like something maybe, I don't know, maybe it looks impressive. If you're into that kind of thing, again, it's not about looking impressive, it's about making good music, but it is something that is just, kind of fun to get up to. And then it's like, all right, we only have to really use our brains on that last note. So we can, first of all, just pretend there isn't a 7th note anyways, and just go open 2, 4, 5, 7, 9, skip right to the 12th fret. But this is what makes you classy, guys. This is what makes or breaks the chords, all right? So we have that. Now, this could come in handy if I start using maybe some chords and stuff beyond the 5th fret, all right? Now, what I think is really interesting and is really essential and critical in understanding music, how music works, and one of the first things that I recommend people do is memorize the names of the notes along the low E string, because so much of guitar is shape-based, and so many of the time we root our chords on either the low E or the A string, right? So what I mean by that when I say memorize the names of the notes on the low E string, it's like, okay, E, F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E. But then know them contextually. So it's like, all right, I know that my notes in the key of G, remember, I start here, I go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. Now, this is really interesting because we have two different kind of touch points on where we can see these notes increasing, right? I know how to start at a G and then go forward through the major scale on the low E string. I also know how to do it on the open D and G strings together. Now, let's do it in unison, all right? But before I do that, I wanna unveil the type of Elixir strings that I use It is the NanoWeb 12 to 53. So 12 is the thickness of the thinnest string, if you've never ordered strings before. I like 12s. 11s are a little bit lighter. 10s are super light. I think 12s are the best balance between really getting a good full tone and still having it be easier to hold down. Elixir strings are coated, which I really love about them. I think they sound better. They for sure last longer. That's just a fact. You don't have to change your strings as often. I notoriously change my strings very infrequently because I like to have that gasoline residue on my fingertips after filling up my car. And the nice thing about the coated guitar strings is it makes my guitar less flammable. My other guitars with the uncoated strings kept bursting into flames because of my personal hygiene. Thankfully, Elixir was able to solve that problem for me. But aside from just that, they sound better and they just feel better. I personally also think they're easier to hold down because they're coated. They don't dig into your fingers as much. I'll have an affiliate link in the description for these exact strings, or try the other ones out too. Maybe you're a Polyweb guy or girl. Check it out. No shame. Elixir's got something for everybody. Thank you to Elixir for sponsoring this video. My all-time favorite strings. Check them out. Link in the description. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna talk about how to use that, what is essentially the same piece of information, right? It's just tracking a note and then finding that formula to make the major scale. In the case of D's note, this would actually be a mode of G major. If you've ever maybe like heard about the modes and stuff, D Mixolydian is essentially just the major scale with a flat 7. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole would be one way to kind of think about that. But knowing that information, along with the root note information, again, this is the first note of the G major scale, the second note, the third note, the fourth note, the fifth note, the sixth note, the seventh note, and the first note again. We can combine them, right? So let's start with the root note here. Actually, let's start with just something in line, even easier. It's just open E, open D, and open G, right? So it's just the open E string. I'm skipping the A string. Again, the nice thing about the key of G major is all the strings open are in the key, which is why, even if you decide to add or accidentally add an open string, it's worst case scenario, it's still gonna be in the key. It won't ever sound too bad. So if we just have open E, D, and G, this is actually a chord right there. It's like an E minor 7 is kind of how we would call that, right? Now we can go forward through each major scale, right? Remember E, F sharp, or D and G now become E and A. So I can kind of get this little hand shape in here where my middle finger is holding down the root note and then my ring finger and my pinky are stuck together. This is going to be very important as you go through the fretboard. And then if you want to, you can get the open strings, or you can kind of just shut it down after these 3 notes. Right? So E, its chord, F sharp, its chord. Now we're going to continue forward in the scale. Remember, this is open 2 and 2, 4 and 4. This is open 2, 3. So open, 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 2, 2, 2, root note 4, 4. This is a G major 7 chord-ish, right? Or just leave the top strings open. So now this is a shape. This is a root note, and then we have its major third, and then it's, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, you don't even have to think about the numbers now because we're combining this shape with this shape. Okay, so again, this has brought me to this spot here. Now from here, I'm gonna go a half step with my little chunker shape there, and then I'm gonna go a whole step here from G to A. And now this gives me the 2 chord in the key, A minor. So G major to A minor. Now again, remember, another whole step. There's B minor 7. The 1 chord in this key, the 2 chord, the 3 chord. Now this would be the spot where my ring finger and pinky go. They go another whole step together. But now this is B to C. So this would be the 4 chord. Now the next part is the distance between the 6th and 7th notes in the 2 string method here. So I'm going 9 and 9 to 10 and 11. The cool thing about this is now my middle finger is grabbing the D on the low E string. So this is actually like a D dominant 7. Up to this point right here, all the notes have been in line. It's either been like a minor looking chord or a major looking chord. A minor, B minor, C major. This is a great example of why the 5 chord is a dominant 7 chord and what makes it a little bit different. It's kind of like half minor, half major. I'm not sure which one would be party in the front, business in the back, or vice versa, whatever. However you interpret that is totally up to you. But that's what's cool about the 5 chord. It's got a little bit of party, a little bit of business. Then we get back in line, just like we were at the top of the exercise, all right? So I will call out the names of the frets, just in the order from E string, A string, D string. Just kind of do it. So it's open, 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 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, 9, 10, 10, 11, 12, 12, 12. And then it's hard to end there. You always want to end back home on G. Okay, so the cool thing about this now is we can use this information and then just go all over the fretboard. We could do the thing that I talked about earlier. We can kind of just jam. Maybe I want to just take what I know about it and then just kind of just jump around and play single notes instead of double stops. But maybe I want to go further into the fretboard. Maybe I want to go the 1 chord to the 3 chord, B. And then I can kind of just jump around here because I'm like, oh, when I do this, D and G string, open 2, 4, 5. I can recognize the 5, 7, 9 as being like, oh, these are just, odd numbered frets. I have dots on the side of my Martin D18 here that kind of remind me that these are the people's notes right here. So if I'm in a chord, I can kind of just jump around between these dots and then always end up home on G. So I think this is a pretty powerful piece of information that is very easy to visualize. Again, it's not so easy to put it into practice, but the trick is to be able to see it, and then you're going to have such a much easier time playing it, right? So we got a lot of different ways you can play it. We can play it together as one. We can maybe kind of just explore it. Like I said, now that I know that the D and G 7, if that's all you take from it, 5, 7, 9, D and G, I can kind of just play around with it, knowing that like none of them are going to be bad notes, adding to the open stuff. Maybe work on your ham-rounds, whatever you want to do. But do that in combination with the chords, because now they're so much easier to visualize, because it's like, oh, these are just combinations of different things that I've seen before. Everything becomes so much easier. And then the only way that you could ever make guitar playing any more fun is by putting Elixir Strings, once again the sponsor of this video, on your guitar. Also makes a great gift, right? So if you know somebody who is really toiling with uncoded strings out there, just give them a pack of these. Tell them that old Sean sent you. And then if you have any questions or comments, hit me in the comment section or the website. I'll talk to y'all soon. Thanks a lot.